You're sitting on the bus on the way to work when you notice the air start to shift inside the vehicle. Out of the corner of your eye, you witness a man becoming increasingly agitated with what appears to be a small boy. In an instant, he raises a tight fist and strikes the boy with punishing velocity. Everyone's gaze turns toward the act of violence unfolding on board. Bam! Another blow, this time harder than the first. Internally, you start to panic. Should you remain silent out of fear that you might be the next victim? Should you intervene to halt the assault? Will others come to your assistance if things get out of hand? Now imagine if you didn't know whether the little boy was a human being or a humanoid robot. Does that change how you would respond? How you hope others would respond too? When we think about who deserves protection in society, we often couch our reasoning in terms of rights. Rights are trumps, bright lines between what we can and cannot do to others and ourselves. They carry rhetorical weight and often the force of law. And while most of you are probably thinking about human rights, increasingly we are living in a society in which rights are being extended beyond the human realm to the natural and even artificial ones. In 2008, Ecuador did something extraordinary. It granted legal rights to nature in its governing charter. This document explicitly recognized that Pachamama, or Mother Earth, possesses the right to integral respect for its existence and for the maintenance and regeneration of its life cycles, structure, functions, and evolutionary processes. Today, rights of nature can be found in parts of the world as far away from each other as Mexico, India, and New Zealand. Fast forward to 2017. Saudi Arabia shocked the world when it granted honorary citizenship to Sophia, a humanoid robot. Suddenly, a machine was considered a member of a political community, albeit maybe not seriously. Some people derided this as just a PR stunt, but it made us think. How exactly is it possible that we could have something that doesn't look anything like a human and has rights, and something that looks like a human but isn't made of flesh and blood? Does it matter if the person being beaten on board public transportation is a boy or a bot? 6 years ago, these questions motivated me to write a book on the subject, Rights for Robots: Artificial Intelligence, Animal, and Environmental Law. Today, I intend to convince you that the more than human world deserves rights, animals, nature, even forms of artificial intelligence. This may seem unsettling, but remember, every major rights revolution throughout history has seemed unsettling at first. In 1898, anti-suffragette Ellen Keane Flynn publicly declared that if women were given the right to vote, it would endanger the sanctity of the home. In 1900, South Carolina Senator Ben Tillman issued a fiery rebuke against the notion of equal protection for African Americans, stating, "As to his rights, I will not discuss them now, and we never will." Let's rewind. For centuries, rights have been denied on the basis of race, gender, and ethnicity. In the United States, the Dred Scott decision of 1857 held that the descendants of enslaved Africans could be persons, but never citizens. They had bodies, but no belonging. It took constitutional amendments, a civil rights movement, and decades of struggle to begin undoing that injustice. Women, too, were long separated from the franchise until well into the 20th century in most parts of the world. The idea that women could vote or own property was derided as absurd. There was even an entire book written as a satire on the prospect of women's rights, likening them to the equally ridiculous notion of animal rights. But today, it feels unthinkable to deny the rights of any person. And yet, if I was giving this talk just over 150 years ago, some of you would not be allowed to attend this public gathering. So rights are not timeless. They are dynamic. They evolve in response to new values, new understandings, and new realities. And every time they have been expanded, we viewed it as a hard-won victory, a sign of progress. Here we are again. The climate crisis, democratic backsliding, and the rise of artificial intelligence are forcing us to ask, who or what deserves rights? Let's look at several candidates. First up, animals. Think of an elephant. Elephants, remember, they form family bonds that last lifetimes. Scientists have documented elephants returning to the bones of their dead, caressing them with their trunks as if in mourning. Or what about dogs, like my Cocker Spaniel Shiva? Research shows that canines possess the intelligence of about a 2-year-old human. They can recognize and respond to human emotion and even exhibit behavior similar to jealousy. So remember that the next time you give a treat to Rex, but not Rover. These are not mindless beasts. They are emotional, intelligent beings. And if we value sentience, that is, the capacity to experience pleasure or pain, as the basis of rights, how could we possibly justify excluding them? The late Jane Goodall once forcefully remarked, "If we do not do something to help these creatures, we make a mockery of the whole concept of justice." Now let's get a little more adventurous. What about nature? Think of a river. In New Zealand, the Wanganui River was granted legal personhood in 2017, reflecting Maori beliefs that this body of water was an ancestor. Importantly, the law conferring this status included the indigenous saying, "I am the river, and the river is me." Legal personhood is widely viewed as a necessary precursor to legal rights. So this was a watershed moment in the formal recognition of nature in Western legal systems. In Ecuador, when a mining project posed a danger to the integrity of the Los Cedros forest, advocates sprung into action. Relying on their country's constitutionally enshrined rights of nature, they successfully argued that permits allowing extractive activities would harm the biodiversity of the forest and threaten species dependent upon it. As a result, the permits were revoked, and now the forest is thriving. Nature is not just scenery, it is kin, it is ancestry. Would you deny rights to yourself or your family? And then there's AI. Are you getting nervous yet? Are you worried about that time you yelled at Alexa? Think of your favorite robot from TV or film. They captivated you, right? But from a safe distance. Now imagine an AI that carries on deep conversations with you well into the night, takes care of your grandmother, and seems almost human. Some of that is already here. Though, no matter what big tech claims or what your crazy uncle believes, we don't know if these systems are truly conscious, sentient, or intelligent. But Professor Jeff Sebo argues in his book, The Moral Circle, that if we don't know if AI can feel, we should treat it as if it does. It is better to be over-inclusive than under-inclusive when the stakes of mistreatment are so high. This is why we agonize over so-called marginal cases like embryos and persons who are mentally incapacitated. We are terrified of getting it wrong. We might not even need to peer inside the mind of an AI. Every one of us have had moments in our lives when we felt close to something or some place, whether it was a household pet, a nearby brook, a favorite stuffed animal. And even though we couldn't prove that these things were conscious, those relationships seem to matter morally. And we're not alone. For some non-Western and indigenous groups, the status of non-humans is less about how well they mimic us and more about their place in our society and our surroundings. So here's the key point. Whether our arguments for extending rights hinge on properties or relations, the line between their application to humans, animals, nature, even machines, has begun to blur. The truth is, more than human rights aren't science fiction. They're already here. And this brave new frontier unfurling before us is not one of chaos. It is one of kindness, compassion, caring, humility, not just towards us, but towards the elephants, the rivers, the intelligences increasingly present in our environments. It's time we accept that our moral authority as humans is fundamentally bound up with how we decide to treat non-human others. Will we stick to our regularly scheduled programming, or will we embrace widening our shared moral community once again? Let's do the right thing and give rights to the voiceless among us.